We are hours away from the big debate. And I have a few concerns. I mean, I've had concerns all along. I get it. You know what? He's ready, willing, and able to have a discussion with the now president anytime. It's like, you know what? I'll meet you there. Any moderator, any network you want. He told us that over and over and over again. And finally, somehow Joe came up with the idea that, yeah, he would do it. But then you got to say why, right? You've got to ask yourself, why is Joe Biden willing to do it? Well, a little bit has to do with the polls, which really stink for him right now. We'll get into that in a second. But he's got lousy polling numbers. And I think there's a part of him and a part of the White House that's like, this is our last chance. And hey, you know, they got the media in their back pocket. And since CNN was willing to craft all these nifty little rules, well, sure enough, they figure it can be a safe enough setting, There's some wacky stuff out there, though. For starters, I would just point out that the two people moderating this thing, well, don't exactly have the best history when it comes to being down the middle of the road. I mean, they're not the middle of the road. I don't care what they try and tell us. These people are not the middle of the road. We've seen it over and over again. But even more concerning is what we're learning right now about the former director of intelligence, James Clapper, and his relationship with these two anchors, including with the network that they work for. I mean, we know that James Clapper lied in a deposition, and we know that he even admitted doing that. He apparently leaked some information, some classified information in that whole investigation that was going on into Russia to Jake Tapper, who then, the anchor for tonight, won an award for it, a journalism award. Imagine that. You just, print what the deep state wants you to print, and suddenly you're collecting awards. Clapper is one to have misled the public in the past about the leak surrounding the Russia stuff and Comey. I do think that it's of concern, right? Because this is the guy that's going to be moderating the debate. On top of that, he somehow just drank up that whole lie that the 51X spooks kept pushing about the Hunter Biden laptop. I mean, that was over and over again. I mean, let's recall, shall we? This actually is an interview that James Clapper, who, by the way, was working for CNN, lovely, had with Erin Burnett on her show. But this is what he was repeating over and over and over again to Clapper, to Dana Bash, to Erin Burnett, to anyone who would listen, right? The same old narrative. When it came to that Hunter Biden laptop, you weren't allowed to say what it really was, which was Hunter Biden's. No, he knew that. Everybody at the FBI knew that. All the intel people knew that. And yet we got this. Take it away, Drew.
Obama. So, Director, a bunch of questions from this. Let me just start with this. How much does the source matter, right? So you hear the story of this laptop. We don't know a lot. We do know that the way that this information is getting out is through Steve Bannon and Rudy Giuliani. How much does the source matter here?
Well, source matters a lot, and the timing matters a lot, I think. And to me, this is just classic textbook Soviet-Russian tradecraft at work. The Russians have analyzed the target. They understand that the president and his enablers crave dirt on Vice President Biden, whether it's real or contrived, it doesn't matter to them. And so all of a sudden, two and a half weeks before the election, this laptop appears somehow and emails on it without any metadata. It's all very curious. But so here you have a willing target, and the Russians, who are very sophisticated about how to exploit a willing target. And to me, that's what's at work here.
And so, when you try to figure out the specifics of, whether that meeting email, for example, is real in the midst of this, do you think stuff like that could just have been planted in there and be completely fake? I
do. I think the emails could be contrived, particularly since, as I understand it from what I've read, they appear without any metadata. That is, from, to, and any technical data, at least immediately evident. Now, if this computer is in the hands of the FBI, they have obviously excellent, sophisticated technical and forensic analytic capabilities, and I think they'll be able to sort it out, whether this is...
All right. So this is the guy who's on speed dial at CNN. This is a guy that is in the ear of the likes of Dana Bash and Jake Tapper. I think Daily Caller had a good headline. They were calling it the clap, tap, tapper, clapper. You get it. I mean, but the point is, little too close for comfort. CNN likes all these ex-spooks that were willing to lie, that were willing to try and sell out the American public and, frankly, our institutions for political reasons. I mean, these people are a bunch of political hacks. They haven't paid the price that anyone else has. McCarthy doesn't like it very much. This is great. This was classic. I want to take you back a few months when Kevin McCarthy just destroyed a CNN reporter who was pushing him on Trump. And he's like, wait a second, isn't your network the one who employs these guys?
The idea of equal justice is not playing out here. And so that's a real concern to all Americans. So as a policymaker, elected officials, we want to make sure it's equal justice for all. We want to look at it as weaponization. Now, you're with CNN, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about this even further, because when somebody weaponizes government and they actually get removed from government, let's take Andrew McCabe, okay, former deputy.
But this is a different
let me
case.
let me answer the question.
This is a different set of circumstances, right? I mean, the former president is accused of misleading law enforcement, of a conspiracy of obstructing justice. That's a different set of facts. Are you prepared to defend him as the former president, and what other actions will the House take in the House Judiciary Committee in terms of funding?
Are you prepared to defend your network, CNN? I'm answering your question. You could ask me any question you want, but I'm entitled to answer the question, okay? You can't put words in my mouth. Even though your network can hire Andrew McCabe, who was fired from the FBI for leaking classified documents. Did you remove him from your network? No, you continue to put him on to give judgment against President Trump.
Speaker.
You also hire Clapper. Clapper has come out publicly.
Mr. Speaker,
and
what steps is the House going to take in terms of, is there any effort to defund the FBI, any effort to defund the Department of Justice after what you've seen over the last several days?
So your network hires Clapper, who literally lied to the American public, one of 51 other individuals that had briefings and used it politically to tell the American public that a laptop was Russia collusion, even though it had all this information about the Biden administration. Are you prepared to get rid of those people from your network? Because my concern as a policymaker is that when you weaponize government and now you're weaponizing networks, that is wrong. So we will take...
And now you run the risk of weaponizing a debate. Again, going back and looking at Jake Tapper's reporting, remember that he published a story based on a leak that came from James Clapper, CNN employee, former President Obama's director of national intelligence, of course, that's Clapper, indicating that Russia had basically hacked into the DNC, right? It was Russia that did that and their emails, and they did that because Trump wanted them to do that. That was the story at the time, and that the Trump campaign was actually working with Russian officials. We've since found out the Trump campaign wasn't working with Russian officials. In fact, Vladimir Putin apparently wanted to congratulate Donald Trump when he won the election and reached out to one of his assistants. And she was scrambling saying, is this like for real or is this a joke, right? Because they didn't have anybody's phone numbers. They didn't even have, like Dmitry Peskov, right, who's the PR person for Vladimir Putin. I might have had better luck, on my email account getting in touch with him than anyone at the Trump campaign did. And I say that because as a journalist, I actually have interviewed him in the past. But the point being, like, no one on the Trump campaign was talking to the Russians the way James Clapper was alleging, and Jake Tapper, who won an award for his reporting, was alleging. So come on. All right, this is who's in the ear of the people that are formulating the questions and the people that are going to have the ability to turn off the mics. More on that in just a second. But I want you to understand who these folks are. All right, Tapper, his history of reporting with his number one source, James Clapper, is quite evident, speaks for itself. And then he gets out there when his network dared to do a town hall with Donald Trump, when it looked very clear that he was going to be top of the GOP ticket. He was furious, as was everyone on CNN. How could they stoop to such a level? They eventually drove the guy who was running the network at the time right out of town because he did a Trump town hall. Come on, people. He actually was trying to get your ratings. And the reality is, yeah, the guy is top of the GOP ticket as predicted. Anyway, I want to go back to that moment in time so you get a little window into who Jake Tapper is. Take a look at him with Anderson Cooper. He's just freaking out. Oh my God, how could we have done this? CNN is over. Here we are.
It was an interesting night. Mr. Trump's first lie was told just seconds into the night with his false familiar claim that the 2020 election was, quote, a rigged election. And the falsehoods kept coming fast and furious about the January 6th insurrection, about the threat to Vice President Pence, about Pence's ability to overturn the election, about COVID, about the economy, and more. He called a black law enforcement officer a thug. He said people here in Washington, D.C. at Chinatown don't speak English. He attacked Caitlyn as a nasty woman because she was...
This is going to be great tonight. Just great, right? And then you got Dana Bash, who, by the way, was married to a gentleman named Jeremy Bash, who's very high up in the intel community, former CIA chief of staff during the Obama administration. She was married to him from 1998 through 2007. You know, I thought it was like a little blip, like a 6-month marriage. No. It was actually a long marriage, 1998 through 2007. Apparently, she took up with another CNN anchor, although I understand that's over after Jeremy. But the point being, he's pretty highly connected in the intel communities, granted. She's divorced from him now, but one has to assume that they're kind of running in the same circles. So are you surprised? Are you surprised at all, ladies and gentlemen, when she says something like this, when she actually says, gosh, it's too bad the Supreme Court can't get rid of him on the ticket. It's too bad for the American people. She said it just a few weeks ago. Here we are.
Here's a question that I have, because it is, again, it seems like the Supreme Court is in a bubble. Or perhaps it's some of the justices are in a bubble, and they're not dealing with, I mean, when they say, oh, Congress can do this, there are members of Congress, and we can go through the list, who are never going to do anything that would make life difficult for Donald Trump. So to think that the Congress is going to solve this, they barely can get a post office name these days.
It's true. I mean, and you can go down the list of Supreme Court decisions that kicked whatever issue over across the street over to Congress, whether it is Obamacare, which is something that the Democrats were very happy about when they did that, a little bit of a different kind of court. Voting rights, I think, is maybe the primary example of what you're saying before this. Look, unfortunately for America, the court isn't necessarily wrong that this is the way the framers wanted it to be. They wanted Congress, the people who are closest to their constituents, to be able to.
Unfortunately for America, this is what the founding fathers wanted. Gosh darn it, those darn founding fathers. I mean, how fortunate for America that Donald Trump is still going to be on the ticket. I'll tell you, he's going into a loaded situation. It is 3 against 1. And I'm not even talking about what's going to go down with the microphones.